Thank you all for being here. My name is Derek Wu, and I'm the co-president of the Harvard Association for Law and Business. We are honored today to be joined by a very distinguished panel made up of the members of the class of 1993. Not only were they classmates during their time at this esteemed law school, they were actually roommates as well. Let me go through some brief introductions. Navid Mahmoodzadegan is the CEO and co-founder of Moelis Company. He has over 30 years of investment banking experience, including prior leadership roles at UBS and Donaldson Lufkin. Andy Saperstein is the co-president of Morgan Stanley. He oversees the wealth and investment management channels. Prior to Morgan Stanley, he had leadership roles at Merrill Lynch and McKinsey. Howard Widra is partner and head of Apollo's direct origination business. There he oversees senior lending to middle market businesses. Prior to Apollo, Howard held leadership roles at Merrill Lynch Capital and GE Capital. The conversation will be moderated by Lori Lesser, partner at Simpson Thacher, who is also a member of the class of 1993. Following the moderated conversation, we'll have time for audience Q&A. That all said, please join me in welcoming Navid, Andy, Howard, and Lori.
Thanks, everyone. If there's one takeaway you should have from the session, it's stay in touch with your friends and classmates from either Harvard College or Harvard Law School. Good things will come from that. Can I just engage the audience? Can I get a brief show of hands of who is a law student? Okay, who is a Harvard undergrad? Okay, and who is Harvard Business School? All right, great. It's nice to see such a great crowd. All right, let's meet the panelists. So just sort of walk us through your journey, how you got to where you are today, and maybe just start briefly in college, what you studied, if you worked before law school, and then your career after law school until today.
Okay, well, I'll start. I went to the University of Michigan. I went to Jack and Jill Nursery School outside of Philadelphia. I went to the University of Michigan. I was an economics major. I went right through, right into law school. So graduated college in 1990. And then after law school, I worked at Steptoe & Johnson for 3 years as a tax lawyer. I think it's like we'll talk about, I was sort of focused really even from the outset of not being a long-term practicing lawyer, but doing some kind of business job. So I focused on tax because I thought it was more, there were more transactional work with substance early in a career than corporate might have been, and had a good experience there. And then I got a job in a small finance company in '97 that was serially acquired ultimately by GE. And then after GE sort of left GE, restarted up a business at Merrill Lynch that did similar lending, healthcare focused. Merrill Lynch, sort of met 2008, and they sold that business to GE again. And so then I started my own business with a bunch of partners and private equity. One of the investors was Navid. So you're right, it was good to stay in touch. And we grew that business, and then Apollo bought that business in 2013 to become effectively their senior debt lending vehicle. And now private credit's booming everywhere, but it was sort of like the beginning of their private credit business, 2013. So now I've been there for 13 years.
So I, like Howard, went to undergrad at Michigan. I was a poli-sci major. Never had any desire or belief I would do anything on Wall Street. Came right to law school here, and again, did summer jobs in Chicago and New York and LA, and I ended up just going to LA because I liked LA. It was definitely not a premeditated path to Wall Street. That would be a crazy thing to do. So I went to a firm called Irell and Manella in LA, which at the time was a great boutique firm. And I don't know, 3 weeks into it, I was like, yeah, this is not going to work out. So it took me about a year to figure out what I wanted to do. And I wasn't an entrepreneur. I didn't have like a great idea. I wanted to kind of, I like to say, stay in the middle of the fairway. I wanted to get another job at a professional kind of company. And I was working on a deal with a bunch of investment bankers, and I'm like, oh, they seem like they're having more fun, and it's kind of more my speed, and they seem like closer to the deals. I was a transactional attorney, so I was documenting and doing diligence, and I didn't really know why the deal was happening. But the bankers were driving the analysis and the reason for why these companies were coming together. And it took a year to talk my way into a job at a firm called DLJ, again, with no accounting experience, no finance experience, just nothing really. And luckily, I ended up working with a bunch of people who 30 plus years later, we're still working together through DLJ, then a firm called UBS after DLJ was sold. And then in 2007, deciding we wanted to go start our own company and being entrepreneurs. So that's my journey.
So I started. I went to Penn undergrad at Wharton. So I did know early on that I liked business. I worked for Salomon Brothers, which hopefully you still remember that it existed. I worked for Salomon Brothers investment banking coming out of undergrad. I liked it, but I wasn't sure that's what I wanted to continue doing. So I went to law school because I was kind of intrigued by the law. And I definitely didn't want to go to business school because I felt like I had gotten a lot of business background already. So I went to law school. I worked at a law firm the first summer. And then the second summer, I actually was hanging out with a friend at the business school, and McKinsey was giving a presentation. And I went because I heard that they were serving shrimp cocktail, and I like shrimp cocktail. And so I went, and I heard the presentation, and I went to the guy. I said, "Would you take a law student over the summer?" And he said no. And I said I have some business background. And we went back and forth a little bit. And then he gave me his card, and I interviewed. And they said, well, maybe they would give me like half a summer. So I said, okay, maybe that sounds good to me. Maybe the law firm that I'm going to go work at would do that. And they said yes. So I split my summer, and I wound up going back to McKinsey. Honestly, largely, because I liked the law firm quite a bit. But honestly, the idea of solving problems and managing businesses and business strategy really appealed to me. I enjoyed that a lot. So I went to McKinsey. I was there for, how long was I at McKinsey? 8 years. A few of them as a partner. I left with my mentor to go to Merrill Lynch. By that time, my specialty was in wealth management, which back then nobody really understood what it was. It wasn't that big of a field. We were there for about 5 years, and then I went over to Morgan Stanley back in 2006, just before the financial crisis. During the financial crisis, we bought Smith Barney, and we became the largest wealth management organization in the United States. And I've been there ever since.
That's great. Well, going back to HLS, do you have a favorite campus memory, a class, professor, event?
We had dinner last night, so most of the memories aren't shareable. They're not.
That's what we were talking about at dinner.
They're not class related. I'm just trying to. So I'm running to the library in my head. I mean, I just loved learning. No, I mean, honestly, I was saying before, like, I was most focused when I signed up for classes just picking the best professors because I didn't think I was going to practice long term, and I just knew there were great professors here. And so I had actually a lot of professors, I thought were great. This political violence and terrorism class with Philip Hyman. My corporation professor, David Charney, who's passed away, was a great teacher. We had Andy and I were in the same section. We had a bunch of really good teachers. Minnow, Michelman, Dershowitz. So I mean, we have really good experience, but I don't know if there's a particular, educational experience.
Look, I distinctly remember, law school is a little bit of a blur at this point. It was a long time ago, but I distinctly remember getting here in the fall of 1990. And, Howard and I went to really big schools, right, where you had your circle of friends. But to get here and see 500-600 superstars from all different walks of life kind of here at the same time was, super inspiring. And once you get to know some of these people and and be part of that level of intelligence and people who had done incredible things, I thought it was a great thing to be part of, even though we complained along the way and there was all sorts of issues at the time. It was an interesting time to be here. I remember that. I remember that feeling of like, hey, it's a special place to be, and you're in Boston, and you have all this history. And I always thought that every time I come to Boston, I come here for work every now and then, I sort of remember that moment. It was a special time in my life.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that. That's probably what I remember the most is the awe. You show up and it's kind of like, my mom's taking pictures of every little thing, buying sweatshirts, and it's just good enough. That's a good enough reason to come. Mom's really happy. And but I do remember, because at Wharton, at undergrad, they just taught us stuff, and all of a sudden here, they were calling on you to talk in the middle of class, and that was like really foreign to me because like, what are we talking about? Just tell us the law, and that was, to me, that was really interesting. Was that we got to hear different opinions about it, and that there wasn't one right answer, and everybody could have a difference of opinion. For me, we were talking about it just earlier. My favorite class was a negotiation class. I still use some of the stuff. I don't know if they still teach like BATNA. They teach BATNA anymore. That's a good concept. You should keep that one in mind. That was a really interesting class because I never thought that something like a negotiation you could break it down into little tricks that could help move a conversation from a disagreement to an agreement.
I just remembered something he said about being there. When I got in, my mom, I still joke with her about it. She's like, "That's your ticket," and I was like, "I'm like a spoiled suburban kid. I didn't know I needed a ticket." but it was. I think we probably all have some of that reaction when we get in.
And then second year of law school, a casino opened up in Connecticut. And
That was a problem.
that was actually a big deal because you were sort of getting bored of, at that point. You're like, all right, casino and 3 hours away. You're like, Saturday afternoon, let's go.
That was probably the biggest obstacle.
That was a big moment.
Well, that is a good campus memory. And by the way, speaking of the negotiation project, Sheila Heen was also one of our classmates. So the class of '93 is extremely overrepresented in the best possible way. How did you guys meet and become friends and roommates, and how often do you guys see each other now?
I don't remember. These guys were in the section together. I was in a different section.
I think I met Howard moving in, right? Like, even though you weren't
Maybe, I don't know if we're in the
doors.
same O group, but
We knew each other in college.
We knew each other in college, and not like in the exact same social group, but enough to sort of connect when we were here, when we were meeting people. And Andy and I don't know, probably everybody has the same. Like when you go into your first section, you gravitate some towards like people have a bunch of similarities. So, but Andy and I were connected right away, like from the very beginning. And then we all lived together. We lived with 7 of us lived in a house. We drove by last night. It's still standing, amazingly. So there were 7 of us, and I think we all connected in sort of different ways. Like people were in someone's dorm or people's sections, and the other 4 guys don't work, so that's why they're not up here.
Yeah. There was no place to hang out back then.
Yeah.
This didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure what we did, but in retrospect, I can't remember where we hung out.
And I think over the years, everybody sees each other sort of different amount, depending on sort of what stage they're going through, or their kids are, or what they see stuff. Navid and I see each other a lot because we both have places in Ann Arbor, and so we go to the football games. That's not Harvard Law School related, but and also, as I said, like Navid, and when we were out raising money, we need to hire a banker. Navid's a media banker, but I was like, I don't really know which bankers I trust. I trust Navid, so he went out to raise money, and when they had just started their firm and had a private equity fund too, so he's like, we'll invest too. So if you have an investment banker who's also investing, that's great, and really helped us get it done right during the financial crisis. So that was great.
That's really great.
And they got their money back.
Plus.
So Andy, you mentioned negotiation. Any other classes at HLS that have been helpful in your career, and what course do you wish existed at HLS when you were there that you would have appreciated taking?
You know, I think some of the classes you were mentioning a little bit earlier, I think are terrific. I found that I learned a lot at HLS about interpreting the law and thinking about different points of view. For me, that was a big deal, coming from an investment banking background and from a business school background. And Wharton is different from Harvard Business School, and at Harvard Business School is a lot of discussion groups, and Wharton was really more about black and white. It's kind of like a black and white, here's how you do it, and here's the calculations and stuff like that. So for me, everything was always kind of cut and dry, and then all of a sudden, it was Howard who had to teach me how to take a test, because you wouldn't want to see my first test, because they were asking these questions, so I was giving them the answers, and I was done first. Good for me. And these guys got these great grades, and I did not. And I was like, what happened? He's like, oh, you missed all this stuff. So for me, that was like eye-opening. It's like, wow, I didn't think of any of that stuff. I saw it like this way. The thing, but some of the classes that are taught right now, which sound like they're a bit more hands-on, private equity or M&A or some of the almost like case study type classes where they take you into what a lawyer in the law firm would do and then play that out. I think that those would have been interesting. I don't know that they're better or worse. I just think that they would have been interesting because it wasn't until I started working at a law firm, in my summers, that I really got a sense of exactly what they did. I don't know if it's better or worse. I just think a mix would have been nice. So I think the changes that have happened since then are positive.
I was going to say, I was asking Steve earlier, I think I was asking you, look, if you think you might at some point want to do anything Wall Street-y business thing, whatever, even if you don't actually, taking accounting, corporate finance is critical. It was a huge handicap that I never took any of those classes either here or in undergrad. And I just, I know they make it impossible to go do it at the business school, right? Still, it sounds like. So hopefully there's a bunch of those classes here, and I would definitely take advantage of them, even if you're not going into business. I think having an accounting training is invaluable for anything you do.
Well, you mentioned the casino. Other than that, any extracurricular memories while you were at Harvard? Any particular student organizations or anything you did?
We're in Hemingway a lot.
You're what, I'm sorry?
At Hemingway a lot. Played basketball a lot. No, we were just saying, I don't think there were nearly as many, extracurricular associations or, I mean, Andy was maybe Rob, but of the seven of us, all of us had went straight to college, and Andy was just 1 year out. So for a lot of us, even socially, it was a little bit of extension of college, meaning we were probably a little bit immature to take advantage of, all of the things we might have been able to take advantage of. We had, so nothing curricular. Do you think anything? No.
We didn't. We were here to learn, get a great education, to meet great people. I think we all had an inkling that we probably weren't going to be lawyers forever. So none of us were gunning for judicial clerkships or, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so.
sort of quick story. I assume you still write for Law Review? There's still all kidding aside, Navid had the highest grades in the.
He did.
He's
he did.
one of the few highest grades in the class for all the way through. And Navid and I both got this package to write for Law Review. And it was paper.
I didn't get the package.
Yeah. And it was this big, and we both looked at each other, and we got in the car, we drove to Lenox. We didn't do it.
We did have one extra. You might have forgot. We joined a money league, a bowling league.
Oh, we did do that.
At Lanes and Games. I don't know if it's still here in Somerville.
And as good as Navid was as a student, Andy is as a bowler. He was a good bowler. So it was in Saugus, and it was, against townies. who are good bowlers. And it was 3 games. By the 3rd game, they were hammered, so we played better. But it was Monday nights, yeah. That was fun.
That was fun.
Look, that was the beauty. Look, I don't know if it's still like that. One of the beauties of Harvard Law School at the time is if you didn't want to take it super seriously, you sort of didn't have to. And you could still do okay. Look, hey, right? I mean, it sort of was okay. Still got a job.
Yeah.
So.
Nervous laughter.
Yeah.
Well, I think you sort of already answered this, but I was going to ask you the question, at what point did you have the eureka moment that you didn't really want to be a lawyer? And when you had that moment, were you like, yes, it's finance, or was it like, well, anything but law, and then finance kind of filled that void? I mean, you sort of already answered it, but if you want to add to any of your previous answers.
No, yeah, I mean, I think you're young, you're just finding your spot. I mean, I think both of these guys said they connected with sort of real sort of talented superstars whose businesses grew. And I had like a somewhat similar experience of a bunch of people. So like once you get in there and you're working with smart people and their opportunities are expanding, your opportunities expand. And so went in a direction where those opportunities were. So it's not like it's not like a menu of 15 things that you can then choose the things. You just get in something and you like it and you like the people and it starts to, take off.
I don't know that at your ages or your level of experience in the world, you could possibly really know what you want to do. I know that everybody feels like they do, or feels like you have to know exactly what you want to do right off the bat. But I don't think that you fully understand what you like and what you don't like, and really find the track until you start. Until you do it, that's when you really learn about yourself. And to Howard's point, a lot of it is just colored by the people that you're working with or for, and so it's just everybody finds something that they like, and it just happens. I know that sounds, you don't want to accept that because you wouldn't be here if you weren't some degree of a control freak. We all are. But it does just happen. You learn a little along the way.
Do you still use your Harvard Law School thinking, even at an abstract level? I mean, I know no one asks you a tort law question, but people talk about, in the paper chase, you'll be thinking like a lawyer. Do you ever find you still use your thinking like a lawyer, or is thinking like a finance person something different?
Yeah, look, I think all of us, I think not just us, but I think when you're out in the world, you spend a lot of time problem solving, right? That's what the job is. Different types of problems, different levels of complexity, managing people is problem solving. And I do think the law is a great training ground for thinking about how to solve problems, right? How to really think through something deeply, how to see multiple sides of, a situation and, try to make arguments to support whatever position you're taking. So 100%. I love the fact that, we went here, I went here, these guys went here. It was great training for that, more than any specific thing we learned. There's probably not a lot I remember from what we learned, but just being amongst smart people and pushing yourself to be able to hang with a bunch of smart people and have the confidence to be able to do that. And then 2, problem solving, more than anything. You guys may not realize it, but that's what you're learning. You're learning how to think through these things, and everything going forward will be some variation of that.
I think that's exactly right. What you're learning without realizing it is, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about having a process to get to a better answer, and that's what I'm sure we all take with us everywhere we go, whether we learned it here, whether we had it. Navid had everything, but getting to a better answer than you started with a process with other people, that's really an incredible skill to have.
Just curious, where is your bar license now? Did you renew it, or is it dormant or retired, or is it still active?
I did take the bar, but I don't think I ever paid dues after a while, so I think I'm inactive, I think. Right?
If there are dues, then I must be inactive.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, actually.
Yeah.
How did you survive the early grinding years, like in terms of your personal wellness, your friendships, relationships, et cetera? How did you get through it?
These guys got me through it.
Yeah.
You talking about here or afterwards?
No, afterwards, like, just being a young lawyer, young banker, et
I'm going to
cetera.
give one quick story because I remembered, I don't know if you remember this now, that after he left the law firm and he came in as an analyst, which was kids right out of college, right? Just because he didn't know the accounting. And I was like, how is it? And he's like, I like chocolate ice cream. I don't like to bathe in it. So, I don't know if you remember saying that.
Look, it's anything you all do after here is some form of apprenticeship jobs, because again, you're not learning the actual knowledge here. Probably, you're going to learn the actual knowledge and skill doing something. To Andy's point, and it's really important to find something you like to do, and then it's really important to try to get really good at it, because the better you get at it, the more you'll probably like it, right? And finding that mix of something you think you might like and you think you might get good at, and then really applying yourself to actually get really good at it. And Andy said it too, like, not get too far ahead of yourself, because none of us, like, you wouldn't chart his role or my role today, and you wouldn't have done the first 4 steps we did to try to get there. There is no linear path from where we started here to where we are today that was intentional. It was sort of like, let's take the next step. Let's see if we like it. Let's see if we can get good at it. Let's really work hard to get great at it. Obviously, you keep your eyes open for opportunities as they exist, but don't keep your eyes so far down the field that you're missing being great at what you're doing, because that's what's actually going to create the opportunity, not constantly being 2 steps ahead of yourself.
I can't underscore that enough. None of us took a linear path. I was just sitting here thinking, I can't think of anybody who took a linear path. It just doesn't happen. And the best way to get through the grind or the early years is don't stress about it, because that's just the process. And I know that that's weird, because the process you've taken your whole lives to this point was pretty linear, right? Keep going to school, keep getting good grades, and keep getting better things offered to you. And then all of a sudden it becomes nonlinear, and there's no more grades. And people are going to give you feedback, and it'll be the first time you've ever gotten negative feedback, and somebody's going to tell you that you're not perfect. And that's the best possible thing that somebody can do for you, because nobody's perfect, especially when you're starting off something that you really don't know a lot about. So, the best thing that you can do in the early years is appreciate feedback, because that's going to make you get better. And don't go into everything hoping for an A+ and killing yourself if you don't get it, because you're not going to get it.
That's a great answer. In your early years, do you have a particular formative transaction or something that stands out where you were just like, wow, I'm really good at this, I'm killing it? And also, was there a mentor or someone early in your career that really transformed or supercharged your trajectory?
I can remember one story. So when I left the law firm and worked at this finance company, it was a small finance company. The 2 guys who ran it were incredibly sharp guys, went on to do sort of big things. John Delaney, who ran for president very briefly recently, incredibly bright guy. But I remember, like, they were lawyers, so they hired me in a business job, and I was on a phone call with a difficult client, was probably to say nicely, and whatever was just trying to handle it in some interpersonal way. And they were always ready to jump in. It was their business. And I remember, like, having this conversation and then, like, not saying anything and, like, nodding and smiling, like I handled it in a way they might handle it, and thinking, like, that was like that definitely was sort of like, their confidence that I could handle it was sort of meaningful. And a lot of what I worked with them for 2.5 years, and then the business was sold. But, like, in a lot of the, probably did 5 years of work in that 2.5 years and got a lot of that type of experience. And to Andy's point, it's like you're just, you're not doing everything right. But if you have the right people you're working with who are sort of handling the way you're evolving and have some faith in you, then it can be pretty meaningful.
Yeah, look, as I said earlier, when I got into banking, I started working with a couple people who were still business partners today, 30 years later, and I was fortunate. I was lucky to land in that position and, kind of create those relationships early. And I there's power in that. If when you get out into the world, whether it's a mentor or a colleague or somebody where you kind of see the world the same way, you share the same values, you're ambitious, and even if you're not working at the same place, if they go somewhere else, you can maintain those relationships. Those are super powerful. I all the time in the business world will meet people, and you'll talk about a transaction. You'll say, well, how did that come together? And that person will say, well, I was at business school with so-and-so on the other side of it, and we've kept the relationship up. So the relationships you're making here and you'll make when you get into the real world are critical, like absolutely critical to look to maintain those and foster those and develop those and keep in touch with those, because they will 100%, they'll make your life better, but they'll also inure to your benefit in whatever thing you end up doing, because those networks are critical to success, I think.
And what I'd say is don't try to over-engineer that. Just learn from each other, learn from the people that you're with, be curious, be really intellectually curious, and just ask a lot of questions. Like Navid, I had a long-term mentor, but it didn't happen immediately, and I wasn't looking for one. I was, things just happen naturally, but they happen more naturally if you wake up every day excited to do what you're going to do, and if you ask a lot of questions and you have a good energy and you have a positive outlook. One thing that people say, but I think it's underplayed, is optimism is far better than pessimism. What's going to happen is going to happen anyway, so you might as well be optimistic. But people are drawn towards optimism a lot more than they are the opposite. So try to stay optimistic while you're going about things. Totally.
Actually, this discussion just reminded me, you were out there being mentored and connecting, we all were before there was LinkedIn, or social media or email. It was all in person. Talk about, what's your advice to people today about, should you show up in person? Do you network a lot on LinkedIn now, or are you more sort of old school, or talk about that?
I don't do a lot of that. To me, there's just nothing that is better than in-person get together. I was so happy when you can get back in the world post-COVID, because the Zoom thing breaks down. In terms, it's fine for communication. Hey, let's do an org meeting to talk about something, but not for relationship building. You can't build a relationship on Zoom. So, to me, just constantly putting yourself out there, trying to spend time with people in different contexts, absolutely critical. Obviously, those tools are helpful to set those things up, but they don't replace in-person, connection. It's really critical.
Yeah, it's really Andy's point of being an optimist. You need to like people. If you like people and you like spending time with them and you're curious about people, you build good relationships. It matters for work, it matters for life, and you end up doing about that. And by the way, not everybody loves that. Some people are introverted, but more than me, these guys are both very, charming and charismatic and always have been. So they get good feedback from people and like it. But I like talking to people too. So you just end up collecting people over the course of your life, whether it's your kids or your schools you go to or work environment, and you just, you should take pleasure in that, because it pays for itself in lots of different ways.
Do you have any one or two career-defining deals or transactions or anything you're most proud of, or is it just sort of a mother can't choose their favorite child, so you don't have a favorite child?
The only thing I'm really proud of is we started this business. There's 350 people who work there just in this business now at Apollo. These people have good lives, and my dad had a business. That was always his thing. It's meaningful. You work with the same people. They build their lives. You grow up together. That is which is somewhat to the answer of it doesn't necessarily matter exactly the alley you do it, if you like it and it's interesting to you and you're working and then you're accomplishing something. For me, it was sort of accomplishing something that had some durability and made obviously it makes investors money and it's successful and it does stuff, but it also sort of drives a good quality of life for people at your stage. And I unfortunately have kids now your age, and seeing when they get in a work environment like my oldest daughter just graduated college. She's in a work environment at a law firm. That's great, and it's rewarding to see it. And I think the people work for her, who she's working for, get reward out of just her developing, and that's, I think, just an important sort of lesson.
I'll tell you one role that I had that I really loved was a role that people advised me not to take. This was at Merrill Lynch because I had been at McKinsey learning strategy. I had been the head of strategy reporting to the head of the business, and then a very small sub business of Merrill's wealth management business, which was kind of nascent and kind of a rounding error, but it was its own self-contained business. Merrill Lynch had something like 14,000 advisors, I think, and they were the ones giving people advice about their wealth. And then we had started this very small online business that's now Merrill Edge, but at the time only had a couple of hundred, a couple of thousand clients. It was like a fledgling thing. They needed somebody to run it, but it was way low in the organization. And they asked me if I wanted to run it, and I said, yeah, I would love to run it, as a matter of fact. And everybody said no, because it was way down in the organization. It was also in a cornfield and just on the outside of Philly, which wasn't really nice because I had to live in what was it? I think it was a Garden Inn. I lived in the Garden Inn for months, years, actually, as it comes down to it. Chef Boyardee little things in the snack bar. But you know what? The reason I wanted to do it and the reason I loved it is because it taught me what it was to run a business. Even though it was a small business and people weren't all that excited about figuring out were we doing better or worse, it taught me how to read a P&L, how to hire and fire people, how to manage a business, make decisions and things like that. And it transformed. It was something I really wanted to do. And I had gotten a little tired of strategy, having done it for so long, and I really wanted to learn what it was like to run a business, which is something that had appealed to me from the early start. And that also transformed the way people thought about my skill set. And so then I could start running different businesses and bigger businesses over time. But the reason I tell you that is because from running strategy and being on the operating committee to running a small business and not being on the operating committee was definitely, to most people, a step down. And people were asking me if I had my resume on the street and stuff like that, because people were saying I'm really sorry. And I get it, but there's no one right answer. It's the same reason why when I'm at an ice cream shop and I still can't understand why everybody just doesn't order chocolate. Why isn't there just one ice cream? There's no one right answer, I guess, because people seem to order other things.
Right. You order the chocolate ice cream, but you don't want to bathe in it. That was a great line. So with you guys, life at the top these days, just walk us through a typical day. Are you post math at this point, or do people under you do that analysis? What occupies someone at your level? Is it managing your teams, selling to new clients? What do you mainly spend your time on?
I'll start. Look, my day is really a combination of working on transactions still. I still, as I mentioned, still in the trenches working with clients on deals at various stages. It's still marketing, either to keep up our relationships, to try to win new business, help our other bankers, even if it's not something I've historically been involved with. And then it's managing the firm and back to problem solving. Every day in an organization of 1,500 people, there are problems, and dealing with those issues that come up, longer term issues, shorter term issues, still takes up a good chunk of my day. So it's some combination of those three things.
I work, Apollo's an investing business, so pretty much everyone still invests. So reviewing deals constantly, on credit committee. It's probably still half the job, just sort of seeing deals. And giving my 2 cents, and then The other half is probably like strategic, like in terms of whether, like how these different businesses at Apollo need to grow. So that could be raising money. It could be where you're strategically positioning the market. It could be like in times like this right now where the markets are sort of like a little sideways. It's like what kind of insurance you need to get, like long-term financing or things like that, just strategy for these different businesses. So that's what I do. But yeah, like definitely still, relatively in the weeds of actually allocating capital.
It's very similar. I mean, a lot of interaction with people. There's always it's really different every day. Like I would say, a day like today where the market's all over the place is different from just a regular average day. You kind of have to be flexible. You have to be mentally flexible because when you wake up, you think you have a day planned, and then things happen, and you have to be able to adapt on the fly.
I would say the biggest difference, which I like the most, is that you're not the primary author of anything, which is nice. So you don't have to you receive something usually from someone smart or talented, so you can opine quickly and sort of move on. So especially if you have a short attention span, it's more fun.
Someone once said when you kind of get into these leadership positions at these complicated companies, when an issue comes up to you, it's usually a pretty complicated thing. That means like a bunch of really smart people whose job it is to solve these issues couldn't figure it out. And so, those things are not easy. And, if it's easy and someone could solve it, it would never get to you. So, and I'm a big believer in, if there's a client of mine he literally won't make a decision after lunch. He's like, by lunch, I'm exhausted mentally. I've made a bunch of decisions. And I don't trust myself to make an important decision after 1:30. And
What does he have for dinner?
Well, he wakes up really early. So no, but something about that actually makes sense, because if you think about it, usually your worst decisions are you're tired, you're not focused, you're this, you're that, and you're not fresh to make those decisions. And I do believe decision fatigue is a real thing, right? The more decisions you make, you start to, that muscle starts to need rest. And so I do think there's something to that.
Yep, 100% right.
Before I ask the next question, just a show of hands, who, at least as of now, thinks they will work as a lawyer, at least for a few years? Okay. Do you guys work with lawyers at this point? And if so, what makes, of course, everyone from Harvard Law School is going to be a very good lawyer. What makes the outstanding lawyer that you keep going back to?
Problem solving, practical. I think like technical capability and sort of like table stakes, the people have that, but there are a lot of there is more of a premium on people who can sort of issue spotting is a big deal. Solving the issues is a bigger deal, and certainly there's lots of lawyers who are good at that, and those are the ones you tend to go back to, and they're not based on what firm they're at. A lot of them can be at good firms, but they're just it's the person.
Yeah, there's lots of very bright lawyers who are really good at telling you all the things that could happen, every scenario, that this could happen and this could happen, but then that could happen, and after a while, you're like, what should I do? What is your advice? What is the practical judgment as a lawyer? Because you understand these set of issues better than I do. It's a business call impacted by the legal framework. Just tell me your advice. And some lawyers can't do that. They can't actually turn all of this intelligence and knowledge and all of this thinking into helping to advise a client or an internal client or an external client. The best lawyers are practical problem solvers.
Do you find do you guys internally, your internal lawyers, do you have that struggle?
No, we hire lawyers who can do that.
But Morgan Stanley, it's harder though, it's bigger.
Yeah, it's a little bit, what I would say is it's important to understand the context of why the question was being asked to you in the first place, and to understand whoever it is asking the question, what they're trying to do. We're trying to get from A to B, and this is the goal. And to what both of these guys are saying, yeah, issue spotting along the way is really important to understand all the obstacles and all the things that we need to do to get there. But just picking one and saying, oops, we can't get there isn't helpful, because coming with a recommendation that said, well, you know what, here's the reasons why it's hard to get to B, but I know where you're trying to go, and we can get to something that approximates that, and here's the road and here's why. And what makes a poor lawyer is if they come to you and they say, nope, we can't possibly get to B, you're gonna have to start over again, you have to do something else. And then you start peppering them with what ifs, because of course that's what you're gonna do, because you don't want that to be the answer. And you come up with, the third what if you say, they go like, yeah, that might work. That's not good.
Yeah.
You want to give them options so they can get as close to where they can. You don't want to give in and give them a recommendation or an opinion that's wrong or that goes afoul of a regulation or a law, of course. But you do want to use it to try to be a thought partner to them and help them achieve the objective they wanted.
All right, let's talk about AI. Just how are you thinking about AI in terms of how it affects your business, and also how does it affect your future workforce and the people in this room?
Oh boy, yeah. I literally just came in from San Francisco, where I which is something I do a lot of. Met with all the major players out there, and AI is improving at an incredibly fast rate. Right? And agentic AI is very different than generative AI, and whatever comes next is going to be different from agentic AI. And AI is now reaching the point where it can make decisions, and it can reason through problems, and it can collaborate. It can work together. So, and we'll be using it for that, because it can both help us become more efficient and also make us more productive. So we'll use it for that. And so the big question that should be on your minds, and we talked about this, just before we came in here, we talked about it, last night in our jobs and about our kids, is so what is permanently human, and how can people work with AI, right? And the one thing that I fully believe is all that you read, people won't be replaced by AI. People who don't embrace AI will be replaced by humans that do. Because AI technology can always make you better by having you think. And so a lot of the things that we're talking about and a lot of the advice we've been giving you is around those things that are uniquely human. Interacting with other people, forming trust-based relationships, being able to collaborate with others, helping others, when we're talking about negotiation or that type of collaboration, choosing from among a whole array of potential solutions that could be right, helping people think through those solutions and reach the one that's best for them, and so on and so forth. So what I think AI is going to do for law, for business, for everything, is take care of a lot of the work that is less value add or less interesting, and allow you to focus on those types of issues, make decisions, reason through decisions, help to set a course, collaborate with other people. So keep those things in mind.
I think we're going to continue to hire a lot of people out of schools.
That's good.
I think I'm not a believer that it's going to be some senior bankers and a bunch of AI agents. Look, we've had, just in my career, the internet, you've had mobile, you've had a bunch of massive technology shifts, and we're hiring more people at the bottom of our pyramids. We call them pyramids because you have a managing director, and then you have VPs and associates and analysts, and our pyramids are as wide as they've ever been. Now everybody inside the pyramid is getting more and more productive and more efficient. And to Andy's point, they're doing less commodity work and they're doing more intellectual work, and that's great. I think that makes jobs in our industry more attractive. But we continue to need people to be the future leaders of the firm, future advice givers, and those people need to be trained, and they need to get the experience and the reps, which is what is really the value added for a client. So I think it'll profoundly change the kind of work we do, but I don't think we're going to be we're going to look very different in terms of the number of people we're hiring.
Okay. It's been definitely interesting times in the global, both political and economic situation. Any thought how your businesses have reacted and are reacting to current events?
Well, are we saying like, attacking Iran, or are we talking about, our polarization? I mean, there's obviously there's so many things going on.
What is recent means the last 5 minutes.
Right, exactly. No, I mean the world's dynamic. I mean the financial markets. I mean, it has been for private credit, and I think sort of generally, it's been a very benign environment since 2008. Really, anytime there was any sort of blip, there's been spending out of it. It seems like sort of like that has an expiration date. It feels like maybe this week, but like it's just not quite as possible to sort of stimulate your way out of it, which means we'll have our first recession and credit crisis and potential sort of that we've had in a long time. I think probably for all our firms internally, they would describe that as an opportunity. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean there isn't some pain, related to it, but like, especially like when you're in a competitive business and you feel like, things are going really well, everyone's doing well. So sometimes you feel like it's not so bad for some challenges to come on to see who can swim. And that's that's my feeling is sort of where we are right now. Like, it's like now it's time for some bills to be paid after 18 years of growth. But that could be wrong too. I said that in 2019 too.
Either of you?
It affects all of our businesses a lot because, I mean, our businesses, the markets, the sentiment, how people are feeling, it certainly affects the businesses one way or the other. So we have to make decisions based upon what's happening at any given point in time. I honestly think that the key is to be as objective as possible. Like while you might do different things based upon what's happening in the world or what's happening in the environment, your approach and your mentality has to stay the same, because a lot of times when there's a lot of volatility and there's a lot of negative news, or even the markets are bad, that's when the best opportunities arise, because people are emotional and they're going to make bad decisions when they're emotional. And if you stay calm, that's when you can capitalize on those. So yes, you'll make different decisions based upon what's going on, but that's the world. The world has changed all the time. And stay optimistic and stay as objective as you can during those times.
Andy, I was going to use the same word, calm. So yeah, we've been fortunate to build our firm through these kinds of periods. We kind of designed the firm to be opportunistic when things got tougher. We hired a lot of people after the financial crisis, hired a lot of people after coming out of COVID, and that's what clients want. Clients want exactly that. They want a calm, seasoned, experienced hand to help guide them through it. And once you've lived through a bunch of these things, and we'll see how deep this gets, but once you live through a bunch of these, you do sort of, you can see your way through the other side of it and know it'll all work out okay. As somebody once said, the world will only end once. So just assume that's not going to happen, and stay calm and try to use the circumstances to your advantage.
So no decisions when you're emotional or after lunch. Both of those
Exactly.
apply. We'll do one more question, then I guess we'll open it up to student questions. If you were going back in time to your younger self, any advice you would give yourself? Would you have done anything differently in your career?
I'd say everything we said today. Like when you're younger, you don't. Certainly, you have more trepidation because you don't know how things are going to play out. And what I said about, I'm sure everybody in there, when you're younger, you do want some degree of control over. You want to have some degree of a sense of like how it's all going to work out and what's going to be the path. And I would have said to me what I said to you. It's impossible to know, so just try to enjoy it along the way.
Yeah, no regrets. Not that we've made every right decision. We've made lots of bad decisions, but no regrets. Howard and I love Michigan football. Sort of football analogy. Next play, right? You're going to have some setbacks. Bad stuff's going to happen. The people who don't succeed are people who kind of get swallowed up in that and look backwards. And there's always a moment to recover, and then it's full steam ahead. And in your professional careers, whatever you do, there will be for sure setbacks. And the people who get through it, who are optimistic, who keep looking forward, are generally the people who do pretty well.
All right, next play. Any questions from the audience? Yes.
Hi, David Allen. I'm a 1L here at the law school. I'm curious when you think of kind of the evolution of the financial sector across the course of your career, especially having 2008 such a seminal moment relatively early into entering that industry. Do you think that experience has changed the way that you view different cycles within the industry and think about strategy when it comes to either like positioning your firms or just navigating through different trends?
Yeah, certainly everything you go through colors it, and I would say there is definitely a big distinction between people who worked through that time and people who did not. And every day there's more people who have actually significantly extended careers who did not, who are making choices without taking that into account. And they may be making, higher growth, more lucrative choices, in the short term, So I do think, I would hate it if I said this when I was your age, but experience matters. You do gather some wisdom, and the things you see do inform what you do. To Andy's point, you want to be objective. You don't want to overdo it. But 2008 was both there were significant things that caused the collapse. It's good to learn from. But I think for all of us it's probably more to learn what unbelievable opportunities there were. Because our firms grew a lot then. So I think both of those things inform everything. And so it has an impact, I think. But if there's anything, I view those types of turmoil as opportunities.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm at the HBS, and I'm actually interning at Moelis LA this summer.
Oh, great. LA,
so
all right.
Super excited.
I'll see you.
Yes. I know you talked a lot about relationships, and I've heard so many bankers talk about growing up with their clients. So I'm curious how you've kind of created that culture and maintained it as the firm has grown so much recently.
So we tell all of our bankers at all different levels that it's just really, really important to kind of make those connections on deals, because I can't tell you how many people were the junior person at company X, and then 15 years later they're running a firm, or they're running a hedge fund, or running a private equity firm. And so really kind of making that part of your culture, where you're treating everyone with respect, you're trying to impress everybody, you're trying to reach out and build those relationships at all different levels and maintain those relationships. It's really critical, because look, let me give you a little bit of a plug for Wall Street generally. Wall Street is the purest form of meritocracy. It's again, back to the football analogy or sports analogy. People succeed based on their talent and their desire and their will and their ambition, right? And there's really no barrier to what you can achieve on Wall Street in all of these different lines of work: capital allocation, wealth management, investment banking. And so people rise very quickly, and you can just turn your head and somebody who you thought was here is here. And so building those relationships and maintaining those and developing a reputation. We talk a lot about reputation for doing great work and being dependable and being optimistic and being smart is critical. And so, yeah, those networks are very, very important.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Tim Lynch. I'm at JD MBA. I was curious, do you have any tactical advice or best practices on maintaining relationships with your classmates over the course of a career?
It's funny, some of it is just opportunistic. You run into them, you see their names. I mean, I'm a big Googler. If my kids meet somebody, I sort of have a rundown of their parents, before they know it. So I'm curious about people, but you can either have your head down as a person, or you can have your head up and look around. You probably do this all the time, this is your whole job. So being aware where people are, if you then know who's in you are more likely to sort of run into them and connect with them. Because over the course of your life, you get busy. If you connect with somebody once in 5 years, that's enough to keep some connectivity when something, comes up. So I would just be it would be keep your head up, be aware. Because the ones you care about, you will stay in touch with, right? It's more just and Navid said it before, in talking about sort of having connections, there are a lot of people, especially as they get more senior, who don't treat people who are not senior well. Just as people, they don't treat them as people. I have been struck by the amount of people I work with who know very little about the personal lives of the people they've worked with for years. So I just think it's important to stay interested in people and connected, and it makes your life more full, but it definitely makes your connections much more.
I was gonna say, don't overthink it either. It's just send a note, I'm in town, just call and say hi. I don't know if they want to hear from, just reach out. Don't overthink it.
People like hearing from everybody almost.
100%.
Yeah, it's true.
100%.
And also, when there's sometimes if there's news about somebody or whatever news it is, switch a firm, get engaged, whatever it is in their life, whether you knew them really well or whether you knew them kind of well, say congratulations or heard about this or what have you. Don't overthink it. People like being reached out to a lot more than you probably think that they do. So don't even hesitate. Just say something they'll remember.
I would also note, if you end up in a major city, there's going to be a Harvard Law School Association at that city, and the programming is excellent. So again, not overthinking it. If something looks interesting to you, just go, because the kind of people that you would be interested in knowing are probably also going to find it interesting and are going to be there. I mean, there are all sorts of events on topics in finance and music and books by, books about the law. So I think you probably use that as a base in most of the cities that you might be working in.
Thank you.
Yes?
My question's inspired by Howard. You mentioned you were a tax lawyer for a period of time. I'm curious, say someone is in some field of law and they have a foundation in accounting and business. What kind of hire from law to your investing practice, finance practice, would be an interesting intellectual value add, but maybe close enough substantively to the business foundation?
I don't think there's a whole lot of really detailed technical skills that you can gather or that you can focus on gathering because the skills that really matter are the ones Navid flagged up front. If you know your way through financial statements and you can speak, there is, I think, a trope which is probably going away with AI, you need to know how to model and do Excel and all that stuff. That doesn't really matter quite as much. But there are a lot of lawyers you work with who actually can't trace the economics of how a transaction goes through. So if you know accounting in the way, that's enough for an investing job. And there are quite a bit of lawyers are in these investing jobs because they do think in a certain way which helps in evaluating risk. And then they also have the basic skills. So I don't think you have to be I need to work on this specific thing. It's just really just being comfortable with finance is helpful and, not automatic by any means.
Great. Yes, Derek.
So we've talked a lot about how careers are not linear. You have to, take the right opportunities as they arise. That all said, as we all graduate from business school, law school, or college, we're going to be very focused on, putting our heads down and doing good work at the junior level. I'm very curious for each of you, as you've risen to like mid-level positions. Now suddenly there's doors that are opening to maybe leave the firm that you're at or take a new role. Like Andy, you mentioned going to run a business that was deemed unprestigious. What are some of the things that some advice you would give to us is like, how do we balance doing good work as a junior, putting our head down, but also keeping an eye out for some of those opportunities?
The first thing I would say is don't leave for money. I would know so many people who left for money at kind of like the junior and kind of mid-level, and when you look back on it, it was ridiculous, right? Even though it doesn't seem that way at the time. It's a really good question. It's a tough question, right? Because when in the story that I told, I actually didn't ask many people because I knew that it was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to try to run a business regardless of how small it was, and it was small. And if I had asked other people, I think virtually everybody would have told me I was crazy. So it's a really tough question that you're asking because like, how do you know? Like the thing that I would tell all of you, which is a really tough thing to say, but you have to trust. You have to trust how you like, what you like and what you don't like. That's why I said the thing about the chocolate ice cream, right? Like to me, it's crazy that everybody doesn't like chocolate. I don't get it, but like different people like different things, and everybody kind of knows what they like, and as you learn more and as you do more, it might be the person. You just like the person, even if the work isn't as interesting and you want to continue to work with that person, or you find this other work to be more interesting. If you do, then continue to go towards something that you're finding more interesting or that you want to do. And if you continue doing that, eventually you'll wind up someplace that you're happy. That's why I said don't do it for money. Money doesn't make you happy, and it will not change your life, but it will change your life in so much as that's what you'll be doing.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is like, it's the people you work with, how much you like them, the quality of them, how connected you feel with them is more important than anything. If you have that, you should value that a lot. And a lot of people leave for money despite that, which is sort of like, it doesn't mean that can blind you from, from great opportunities. But those are the things that really sort of, drive lots of value to you, even just in roles and career, like you just that I think is really key.
Yes.
I'm Sophia, I'm a lawyer. I'm currently pursuing my MBA, and you mentioned a lot calmness. So I would like to ask, how did you cultivate calmness throughout the years?
Honestly, I think a lot of it is just having a lot of what we call reps, like just having a lot of experience, just working on a lot of things, seeing a lot of situations. So much of what we do, giving advice, which is the core of what we do, is about muscle memory, having seen certain situations, developing an instinct and a judgment for how things may play out. And if you have a good sense of how things may play out, it does give you the ability to be calm. Having gone through some of these crises before, again, I've been through, 15 major crises or mini crises in the last bunch of years, and just knowing that we will come out of it. Our system is strong. There's lots of checks and balances in the system, and while you have these corrections, you have periods of time where there's a recalibration or whatever, that we will get through the other end of that, and the people who kind of plan for that are positioned well for that, are the people who will prosper and grow their companies. So a lot of it is just experience and reps, as I like to say. Which is why I think one of the things to think about as you're going to whatever job you're going to go to is that, am I going to get that experience? Like, even more than the money and what the brand or whatever, am I going to the best of your ability, analyze, is that next job I'm taking, is it going to give me the experience I'm looking for? Does this institution, this company have a track record for delivering that kind of experience? And that's something you can diligence. in all likelihood, most people are going to go to places where they hire lots of people. And they've hired lots of people for a long time. And you can talk to those people and say, what was your experience like? And, you know, if you go to a place where you're going to get those reps, even if you're not there forever, I think that's part of your personal development, your professional development.
I also heard somewhere that Moelis is hiring a lot of people. So you can line up right after this.
In the back, yes?
Hi, my name is Adam. I'm a 1L at the law school. I also live in Michigan, so go blue.
Go blue.
My question is, as you were coming up in your careers, how did you make the most out of your mentor relationships so that you felt like you could sustain them and learn the most?
Mentor relationship?
Yeah.
I think there's natural relationships that formed by being in the trenches together and going through experiences together and finding commonality and, you know, people like working together. And that's when you form these relationships, whether it's a mentor-mentee or brother, little brother, big sister, little sister. Like, those things tend to be more informal. I think it's very hard to kind of legislate them, and they just sort of either happen on their own or they don't. And for some people, it's been a big accelerant to their careers, and for other people, like, they never had that, and that's okay too. So.
I would say the only thing I would add is, you know, ask questions. A lot of times, if someone more senior than you asks you to do something, they might wind up being your mentor. They might not. Who knows? Or they might already be more of a mentor figure. But right out, you know, off the bat, if you're not sure what they're asking, or if there's something clarifying, or if you want to get more context or something like that, ask the question. A lot of people, you ask them to do something, and you can see it in their eyes that they didn't quite get it, and they say, okay, and they're about to run off, and because they're afraid to ask the question, which is normal. That's a normal human reaction, and we might sometimes we're in a rush. We don't explain it well, right? Or we're assuming knowledge that you might not have because you haven't dealt with that kind of a thing before. We respect people that ask the questions and understand it and then go off and get it done. So, you know, never be afraid to ask those questions.
Yes.
You guys talked about what it means to be, you know, a great lawyer, a real practical problem solver. Can you speak to what it means to be a really spectacular junior associate? Like, you know, we're all going to graduate, we're going to be in junior positions. You're hiring us from Harvard Law, you know, we're smart, but what does it really mean? You know, maybe it's always asking questions, or what you can speak to in regards to that.
I'll take a first crack at it. So, because there's a vast difference between what, like, some junior associates deliver, and I would say they're all capable technically of delivering what they want. There are only some who are, you know, understanding the context, to what sort of Andy said, asking questions, understanding the context, and trying to sort of, it's like being a lawyer, like trying to understand the greater picture. Like your job, what I was going to say about a board, like your main job as any employee is to make your boss's life better and easier. Like that's like your first job, right? And the way you do that is to understand, you know, holistically what's going on. So when you're a junior associate, they might be like, go build this model or do this deck. And you can spit it out and get it right. But if you understand the context of like why it matters, what the pitch for, what they're trying to win, what the audience is, you will do a better job, and you will do a better job than actually 80% of your peers. It's not always so easy, sometimes not easy to get the context, but like it is like the ones who really grab, you could see it pretty quickly. Like there are like some junior people who are just like, okay, like they're focused on the whole picture.
Yeah, look, Obama has a great line. He says, you know, people get shit done. That's what it is. Like, just do great work. Come with optimism. Be somebody that you want to be in a foxhole with. Be curious, want to learn and grow and develop. 98% of the job is that, right? And yes, there is an additional 2% of the people who kind of take it to another level and stand out. But 98% of it is just like care, show up, have a smile on your face, be a good team player, get the stuff done, be happy, don't complain. Like nobody wants to hear people complain, right? Do a great job in that step. The next step will come. Do a great job. One day you're going to wake up and you're like, oh my God, this is incredible. I've achieved all this. And it's not a lot more complicated than that from my point of view.
I'll go back to the feedback point. The only thing that I would add is every time they're going to, when you have the first thing, you're going to have the first draft, you're going to do the first thing, they're going to give you some thoughts as to what you can now do or do differently or this or that. There are some people, and you know immediately, like, oh, how am I going to word this so they don't feel bad about themselves, and try to explain to me why they thought of that, or no, like we know that you haven't done this before. We know that you're junior in this and you're just beginning. We're on your side. We want you to succeed. We also didn't know when we were there, and we're not judging. And so take that with a smile, and then go do it. Don't feel like you have to show people that you're perfect, because we know that you're not, because you haven't gotten the reps yet.
By the way, it's okay to say, I screwed this up, but I want to learn and do better. It's so refreshing to hear that, like, hey, this one's on me, it won't happen again, Great, like, love that.
I think it's.
Navid, Andy, Howard, Lori, thank you guys so much.